Welcome to the Love Dog Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raina Butcher, here with our host, Dr. Hensley, the owner and CEO of The Dating Decoder.
Yes.
Hey.
Hi.
Episode 21 today. I'm excited about this one. I know I say that about, like, I'm so excited about this one, but I am excited about this one. So this episode is Pop psychology is not psychology.
Yeah, because there's a meme circulating right now that's like pop psychology is not psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did a video on this last year, and it was the video that first put me in the national media for the first time. And I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like, somebody contacted me and they were like, I opened up MSN.com today and here you were. And I was like,
what?
What? Send me the article.
Mom,
No, they didn't even ask me.
Yeah.
They just took my video and basically elaborated on it. But
Right.
it was all about pop psychology is not psychology.
Yeah. I don't remember that video. I have to look it up.
And
We
you
may
know
need
what?
to recirculate it.
Of course. It was, I had no makeup on. I'm like doing a walk. It
Yeah.
had terrible sound quality. It was just something that, I don't know, I had just seen before I went on my walk or something. And I was like, I'm fired up about this right now. I'm just going to make a video. And of
That just
course,
goes
it's
to
always the
show-
ones that you like don't try hard with
I know.
that blow up. And I'm like, well, okay. I think it had several million views. And it's just like, okay, well, that was a day I decided to not put makeup on and not
Right.
do my hair. And
It just goes to
look
show that you don't
little-
have to get things so right before
That's
you
right.
just do it, right? You just do it. And so for all those people who out there who are thinking about doing something that you love,
yeah.
just don't be afraid to do it.
The biggest change in my entire life was going from a think about person to be about a person.
Yeah.
Like, I am
Amen.
such a be about a person. And so this is a really good example of that. My husband and I we bought a lake lot. So we are, I'm a 4th generation Lake Cumberland boater.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big deal. Or I'm a 3rd generation. My kids are 4th generation, sorry. And so we love Lake Cumberland. We have a boat. She's an old boat, but she gets us on the water. Anyway, we got this like really awesome deal on this lake lot, like just kind of on the outskirts in an area it's going to be more, built up, but for now it's kind of desolate. And it's just this beautiful lot. And we've been sitting on it for like a year. And we're like, we're going to build a house. We're going to Airbnb it. It's going to be our retirement home, but we can have like family events there. It's going to be awesome. And we're so clueless about because we don't live in that area.
Right.
So like, who can clear the lot? Like, who are the builders? And we just kept putting it off. And Donald was like, we are such be about it people, and we have not been a be about it person
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
And then this week we were like, okay, I was like, I'm giving you full reign, just go do it.
Yep.
That lot is already cleared. We have a builder and an architect coming.
That's amazing.
We're like,
That's what you
we're
got to
doing
do.
it. You just have to execute. You have to minimize the time between the time that you think about something and the time that you execute it. Because listen, even all the planning in the world is not going to always make that big of a difference.
Right.
Sometimes it ends up being worse and
It
you just
does.
put things off.
It does.
And I think that that's what's happened in my business. Like, the more we just execute,
Yeah.
and then if it doesn't work, you just pivot and do
That's
something
right.
else.
That's what I was going to say. It's been our mission since really, I came on to this, and we said from the get-go, like, we're not going to overthink things.
Nope.
Because when you overthink things, all you do is waste time, and you spend time looking at other people that are half as talented as you, or half of what you know, do things that you wish you could do.
I know.
So
That's why I don't looking at my competitors. That's
Yeah.
why I'm like,
yes,
you look at them and tell
Yes.
me like what
I can
we
look
need to
at
do,
them.
because then I'll just use social comparison.
That's right. So,
That's so
and
fun.
ain't nobody got time for that.
No.
But that's not the topic of this episode. The topic of this episode is pop psychology. And so we're just going to break down really the meme that is
The
circulating.
meme. It's
that's
everywhere.
circulating.
Well, at least I've seen it everywhere.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because obviously
Your
I'm a
algorithm.
psychologist.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And we posted it. We posted it.
We did. We reposted it.
So the first one is, everyone you dislike is not a narcissist.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's true. Because, I mean, the hard fact of the matter is we don't have that accurate of data of who is actually a narcissist, like how many people are actually out there in the population that would classify as having NPD. And there is such a difference between somebody that has some narcissistic traits and somebody who's fully NPD.
Right.
NPD is a narcissistic personality disorder, and this means that they are at the level of a disordered personality, which means that their disorder is very, very stable and it's very, very severe.
Yeah.
right? Somebody that did you wrong is not always a narcissist.
Right.
Like, we have lots of FAs out there that are mean and spiteful during conflict, but they carry a lot of shame around it.
Right.
You know?
And I think that if you want, if any of the listeners want to explore this even further, we actually did a whole entire episode
we did.
on Are They a Narcissist?
Yes.
That really breaks down the nuances of people who are just maybe have attachment issues versus someone who could potentially be on the spectrum, further down the spectrum to have something like MPD.
Right.
And I know that, I think it's important that we preface this whole episode with the idea of, the reason why we feel like this is an important topic is because with social media comes, yes, higher levels of consciousness for people to focus more on healing and their mental health. But with that higher level of consciousness also comes things like this, where we often take it over the line, right? Where we make it a bigger deal than what it really is. And that's what pop psychology is.
And there are a lot of people posing as psychologists.
Heck yeah.
That are not psychologists.
And not credible at all.
Not credible. And, I'm not saying that they're saying they have a degree in psychology and they actually don't. I'm saying that they are giving a lot of psychological advice.
That's not accurate.
That's not accurate. That's not data-driven. That drives me absolutely freaking
I know it's your pet peeve.
It is my pet peeve. And there are people that are like claiming to be literal attachment experts that cannot differentiate between a fearful avoidant and a dismissive avoidant. And to me, that's almost sickening.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you read any science?
Yeah. Yeah. Or you're just out there spitting.
How to love the avoidant man. What type of avoidant are you talking about? Because
they're totally different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Totally different. Everything about them is totally different.
So yeah, I think this is an important issue because it debunks a lot of that, and that's what we're here to do. Because one thing that you are is credible. So the next one, this one's a big one because this is something that I feel like I won't specify generation, but with the higher levels of consciousness and all of this, media around psychology and mental health, every unpleasant experience is not trauma.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is trauma is a little nuanced. And attachment traumas are often unrecognized in a lot of people. But also, we are raising kids more and more and more that cannot tolerate discomfort.
Yep.
Even for a minute.
And have no coping skills.
And have zero coping skills.
Because they've been validated over and over and over.
Right.
That,
there shouldn't be no safe spaces.
Right.
There should be no trigger warnings. Because guess what? When that really awful thing happens to you, there's not going to be a trigger warning that it's coming.
No.
There was no trigger warning for me that my father of my kids was going to show up dead one day.
Right.
There was no trigger warning about that. Right? And so how in the hell are we supposed to prepare people for the inevitable trauma that will happen in your life?
Right.
If we treat every little discomfort or unpleasant experience as that's potentially traumatizing for me, I can't hear it.
Right. Or just masking it, right? I think our generation is notorious for this. We try to take all the discomfort that our children feel.
Yes.
And
I know I'm
overcompensate. I'm guilty of it.
I'm guilty of it too.
And
I've really focused in the last couple of years more on attachment parenting, because I think attachment parenting gets a really bad rap, and there are people that distort what attachment parenting really is, like this whole gentle parenting movement. I see it as, teaching my children to be securely attached. And this was an example I gave in my group the other day. So a fundamental core capacity building principle that I teach are metacognitive skills. Metacognition is just this idea that we can know what we don't know. We can observe our own thoughts. There's a lot of different things under the umbrella of metacognition, but challenging our own thoughts is one of those. And that's a big one for earning your security. And I do this with my children. So for example, if my oldest daughter comes downstairs, who's 13. So there's a 6-year age gap. My oldest is 13. My youngest is 7. And if my 13-year-old comes downstairs and she stomps her foot and she says, my sister is always coming into my room and she's always taking my stuff and she's always using my products and she's always like meddling in my things. The first thing I will say is, wow, I see that you're really frustrated. I'm with you, sis.
Yeah.
Right? So what did I just do? Validated her feeling.
Right.
That I see it
Right.
and I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, that's calming for her, right? And it's calming for most people.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're hearing me. I can take it down a notch.
You hear me, you see me, you understand
Then I
me.
go, okay, first of all, is it really always?
Yeah.
Is it every day? Is this an everyday thing?
Right.
Like, no, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Is this an everyday thing?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it's like, maybe once a week. And I'm like, okay, well, that's still unacceptable to you. I understand why you'd be frustrated by that. But I think we need to change the framework that it's not always.
Right.
And she's like, okay, so what I'm teaching her to do is use metacognition, challenging your own thoughts.
Right.
This is a cognitive distortion. You're catastrophizing it.
Right.
It's not always. Right?
Yep.
So I'll point out that's not a really valid thought right there.
Yeah.
And that is such a huge part of earning your attachment security is
Yeah.
to be able to recognize your own cognitive distortions and changing them in real time. So I do that with my child.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so it's not always, but it's enough that it still doesn't feel good.
Right.
And you need to have a boundary, right? And I
Yeah.
can help you with that. Okay, what are you feeling right now in your body?
That's a big one too.
Right. It's like, it's in my chest. It's like my chest is so freaking tight. I'm like, okay, well, let's notice that. Can you breathe through that for me? Mm-hmm. Can you see if we can get that to calm down, and then we can really figure it out? Because what we know is a dysregulated person cannot learn.
Right.
A dysregulated person will never be rational. Mm-hmm. So if we need a rational solution, how can she get there if she's dysregulated?
Yeah.
Right. We know that. That is such a well-validated finding in psychology that if your nervous system is dysregulated, you cannot learn.
Yep.
Which is why I love my hybrid group because DAs get dysregulated in one-on-one coaching or in couples coaching, and the group is a place where their nervous system can handle it and they can actually learn the stuff and actually change.
Right.
So I love my group. Anyway, and so I'm like,
that's why it's effective.
We calm down, right? That's why it's why it gets results. So it's like, okay, let's calm down. All right, you're calm, right? You feeling calm? Is it out of your chest? Okay, cool. So what kind of boundary do you think you need to set? Well, I've told her not to do it and she doesn't listen. Okay, so clearly telling her doesn't listen.
Right.
Right? So what step do you have to take to protect yourself? Well, I can lock my door, but then that means that like if you knock and I have to get all the way up and go across the room and like let you in or like, or if I forget to lock it, then she comes in and I'm like, okay, well, how about, maybe we put like a keypad or like some let's do something. Let's figure out some way that's more convenient than just like locking your door all the time.
Right.
Right. Let's figure out something. Right. Or maybe we put a sign on the door that reminds her that she has to knock.
Right.
And then let me be the parent and I'll give her the consequence if she doesn't respect the sign.
Right.
So I help her figure out what the appropriate boundary would be. And she's still a kid. So allowing me to take the power of being the parent over my younger child is not making her the parent, right, at that point. So I'm not parentifying her by saying, no, you only have to deal with your sister. If you've tried, I'll help, and you've tried and you've tried and you've tried and somebody's still trampling your boundaries, then I'll step in.
Right.
But I'm going to let you try first.
But you did a lot of things there. You helped her not catastrophize it.
Oh, yeah.
You helped her not be the victim.
Yep.
And you gave her a solution.
Yeah.
So it's like, which makes her feel like, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Which is really what we should be doing with our children and saying, hey, not everything is this life-altering event where you are like, everything's terrible or that you're this victim, because I feel like specifically, with my son's generation,
Gen Z is a huge bunch of victims. I'm sorry. They're going to come at me again.
The tiniest thing
maybe
can
not
happen.
all of them, but it is a mentality in that generation.
The tiniest thing can happen and it's like somebody just like stole their puppy dog or something. And I'm like, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
John Paul was talking to me last night about something Jess's mom said to her when he dropped her off. And I'm like, so? Like, he was like, well, she yelled at her and like, because she didn't throw a box away. And I'm like, well, then I guess she needs to throw the box away.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. Like that's called taking initiative. When you see a need, oh, that box probably needs to be thrown away. I'm going to throw it away.
Mm-hmm. So I think that we can be effective parents and create grit and create resiliency through teaching regulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regulation is what makes people resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching people to stuff down there and suppress their feelings
Right.
is what we unfortunately have in previous generations taught as
Yes.
regulation and grit.
Right.
And
That's
those
more
people
us.
end up with a host of problems.
Right.
Right. So let's treat true nervous system regulation
Mm-hmm.
and teach people how to calm themselves down, how to set appropriate boundaries, and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think the example you gave was the perfect kind of breakdown of it. So I think this is a good segue for the next one because it's kind of on the flip side. Having needs does not make you codependent.
Yeah, it's appropriate to have needs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you should stand up for your needs.
Yeah.
And there's this real mentality that if I have to ask for it, it doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
With certain attachment styles, you're probably going to have to ask for your needs to be met. And if you're somebody who that deeply hurts, like if you're fearful avoidant, that's going to hurt you to have to ask for your needs to be met. I get that. Then maybe dating or being with a dismissive avoidant isn't a good idea.
Right.
Codependency in a nutshell is I'm not okay if you're not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a big topic that, John Paul, I'm trying to teach John Paul right now because he's young, he's in love.
Mm-hmm.
Those first loves are difficult to navigate.
We both have the tickle in the throat going on right now.
Do. And so, because the love is so new and you don't know how to navigate it, there is this big level of codependency that I see with him and Jessica right now. And part of me, I just keep trying to plant the seeds, right? On like, okay, this is what happens when you're codependent, right? You lose this sense of self. And then if something happens to the relationship, then you no longer really know who you are outside of that person. And I'm just trying to, it's not totally getting through just yet. And I'm just like, Josh will say things and I'm like, babe, they're just going to have to learn the hard way. When it comes to love, it's kind of, you got blinders on. But it's just
pain
like.
is the thing that makes you grow.
I know. And it's, as a mother, it is so hard to watch. But what I'm trying to explain to him is that with codependency, yes, they're not breaking up every other weekend. But with codependency to the level that they are exerting it there's also this level of toxicity there, right? But to this specific point, which we're trying to make, which is having needs does not make you codependent.
No.
The difference is just stating them, right?
Right.
And then not being afraid of what that person is going to do because you just stated them.
Right.
Which is another thing that I'm trying to describe and explain to John Paul. You and Jessica have to be able to tell each other no. And be okay saying it and accepting it.
Absolutely.
So the next one, disagreement is not gaslighting.
Yeah. So everybody is entitled to their own reality. And you not being able to tolerate someone else's reality doesn't mean you're being gaslit.
Right.
It means that person has a different past than you, a different set of wounds, a different lens. Their brain paid attention to different parts of the situation, and they experience something differently.
Right.
Now, if your partner is always coming out of left field and you can never understand them, then you might be with a very unhealthy person.
Right.
But you are not entitled to rip somebody out of their reality.
Well, and disagreements in intimate relationships are healthy.
Absolutely.
They if they're handled properly, right? So if you're able to do all the things that Dr. Hensley teaches in our group, which is first and foremost regulating your nervous system and being able to sit down and actually have a discussion and a conversation around why the disagreement is happening.
Right.
And
it should really look like, okay, my experiences and feelings are this. Your experiences and feelings are that. And that's okay.
Right.
That they're different. But how do we move forward in a way that feels good to both of us and maybe prevents this misunderstanding again?
Right. Right.
But people can't do that. They get stuck in, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. And you must absolutely agree with my perspective and have my reality or else we can't move forward.
Which is gaslighting.
I mean, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But not every disagreement is gaslighting.
No.
And then I think this is a big one too, which is not all conflict is abuse.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, some of these are pretty black and white and self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're in a really heated discussion, it's normal for your voice to elevate a little bit.
Right.
That's different than somebody screaming at you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my husband and I both have very, very strong boundaries around disrespect during conflict because we've both been in seriously abusive relationships.
Right.
You know, one of, gosh, I can't reveal too much. Okay. I'm just going to say we've both been in very abusive relationships in the past. Things we will not tolerate: yelling, cursing, physical aggression or intimidation, somebody leaving abruptly without saying, hey, I need a break and I will be back, and giving reassurance, because that is okay.
Yeah.
That's okay for somebody to say, hey, I feel really overwhelmed and I need a little break, but I want you to know I'm coming back at this time.
Right. But
And
just leaving and
but just being like, I'm done.
Yeah,
and
that's
leaving,
neglect.
No, it is neglect.
And that's
it's
a
not
form of
okay.
abuse.
Yeah. Threatening divorce. That's not okay.
It's a big one.
Right? If you are really wanting to get a divorce, that is something that you should have been thinking about for 6+ months.
Yep.
And be prepared to deliver that in a way that is going to protect the dignity of your partner.
Right. Where it's not just this emotional knee-jerk
reaction.
Yeah.
So those are the things we do not tolerate.
And those are the things that are all abuse.
Yeah. Those are things that are abuse.
Right.
Somebody disagreeing with you, somebody raising their voice a little bit because they're heated, somebody saying –
Making a point.
You know, somebody saying, I disagree with you. I think fundamentally that's not fair.
Right. That's not abuse.
No, it's not.
No.
I've known abuse. And speaking of abuse, I actually want to have a little segue, because I've been wanting to talk about this on this podcast, and I keep forgetting to say we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
That movie, It Ends With Us. You watched it. You went with another friend that we know, and you guys boo-hooed.
Yeah.
I had zero reaction to that movie.
Interesting.
None. I actually went, are you freaking serious?
Yeah.
That's an abusive relationship?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that the physical abuse that she experienced in that movie wasn't bad, but where in the hell was all the emotional manipulation in between?
Yeah, no, I didn't see that. And listen, I feel like it was the way that it was filmed. Like, it was filmed from her perspective of not realizing that, like, it was abuse. So, like, even the physical abuse they show looks like accidents. But I think really in the truth of it, it was happening differently. It was just being told from her perspective.
Right.
Now, the emotional, I mean, they kind of left all that out.
Yeah,
because
that's why
he was dreaming.
That is not an accurate description or accurate portrayal at all of what abusive relationships look like.
Yeah.
Physical abuse usually comes in as sort of the end result of years of emotional abuse and manipulation.
Yeah.
Because you've learned to tolerate the emotional abuse, so then they escalate to the physical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just like, I have a dream guy in between the times that he throws something at my face.
Right.
I just went, are you freaking like, it didn't make me cry. It didn't give me any internal reaction, because to me it was such fantasy and such fakery. I don't know if that's even a freaking word.
Yeah.
But I was like, that is not what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm like, one time I was locked in a laundry room for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like with my children running around.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they really did do a good job of like going into
And then I was told it was my fault.
Yeah.
That I deserved it.
Yeah. That is abuse. And I mean, I do think he sort of love bombed her at the beginning, though.
I mean, sure, a little bit.
And he did come off sort of as like this really like egotistical, like, you know, I'll never settle down, which sometimes like narcissists will do, right? They'll be like, you can't have me because I'll never settle down. And then it was just like this
but
game
now you got me.
Right. It was this game of like, now you got me.
But there wasn't like the verbal degradation.
No. But
there's so much of that in abusive relationships.
But I still think that, you know, physical abuse can exist in certain circumstances without the other.
Yeah, see, I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're just going to have to disagree on this.
like I would say,
because I could think that like if you were in that circumstance where you did have this dream man in between maybe the physical outburst where he does like maybe lay his hands on you, that's what makes it so hard. That's what makes it so difficult to leave.
Yeah, I wouldn't be willing to say it it doesn't exist at all, but I would say it's not the norm.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not the norm. I do agree with that.
I would have liked to see a lot more manipulation in that movie to educate people about how the manipulation part of it makes it so hard to leave. And I'm just like, she said she was getting a divorce while he's holding her baby.
Yeah, that was a little much.
I'm like,
some of it was
anybody that has ever been in an abusive relationship, would you ever tell that man you're leaving when he's holding the baby?
No. Some of it was a little like outlandish, right? Some of it was very like Hollywoodish.
I gave it, and I love Blake Lively, and I think she did a fantastic job. I think she's a fantastic actress.
And the casting for the young girl was spot on. Like they even looked alike.
Mm-hmm, they did.
But gosh, and the actor, he's dreamy. I'm sorry, Josh. He is dreamy.
Really? I was like,
oh yeah. See, I don't know. There's something about like his very like almost those sharp features and like he's just a dream. Anyway, it's not what this is about. But it is about abuse. But
yeah, sorry, I went off on a tangent.
It's
It's because I've been wanting to talk about that.
Yeah,
Donald and I just looked at each other because
now we're like, we disagree.
You know what? F it. His previous marriage was terrible and abusive.
Yeah.
Horribly abusive.
You're allowed to say that.
Okay. Well, I'm, she it's only defamation if it ain't true.
Right.
Okay?
That's right.
And and that is this huge thing we bonded over. Like when we first met, like we had come out of abusive marriages. We had been on this really long healing journey. And, we looked at each other after that movie and we went, that is so not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's really not. For the norm, it's probably not.
Yeah. Anywho, moving on.
So, because we actually do know what real abuse looks like.
Yeah.
But, and I mean.
And I had physical abuse in my relationship.
Yeah.
In my marriage, I was physically abused.
In fact, my ex never really laid his hands on me. I mean, he did at times sort of to, we don't have to get into all that, but he came really close.
Oh,
but his was more emotional. Yeah, I know you did. You had all of the above.
Yeah, and that's what makes me so mad right now with, I'll reveal some things. There's family members of my ex-husband who really hate my platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very, very difficult decision whether or not to be honest, especially because my ex-husband is dead, about the abuse that I endured. But would you want a football coach who had never played football?
No.
I want to tell people, man, I've been there.
Yeah.
And I know.
Yeah, it makes you more
that
credible.
It's hard to get out.
Yeah, it makes you that much more credible.
And I pulled myself out of the depths of hell and I healed from the trauma and the damage that did to me. And how can I talk about that if I am not honest about what happened to me? And I know that hurts his family. Mm-hmm. And if you know who you are, and if you are listening to this, which you probably aren't, but if you are, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
I'm sorry. I know it hurts your heart, but the fact that he died doesn't undo what he did and how it affected me and how it affected my family, my girls, my mother, my poor mother. I think it gave my mother cancer.
Yeah.
I honestly think the stress that man put me through and the times that my mom had to rescue me, go to hotels rooms with me because he was beating on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And stay overnight. I mean, the amount of times I was kidnapped in my own home, the amount of times I had my devices taken from me, my credit cards taken from me, the amount of control, the amount of manipulation, the amount of cheating, the amount of physical abuse, it was the depths of hell.
Yeah.
And I am so sorry to his family members that hate hearing that and that have amnesia because they witnessed it with their own eyes too, plenty of times.
It's so difficult, I think, for family. I have a story to acknowledge the truth.
Yeah.
When it comes to, the person that they love. But something recently happened to me that was, I don't even think I've had a chance to tell you this because we haven't seen each other, that was so validating and so healing. and it just happened this past week. John Paul, and again, I want to be careful what I say because I know like my ex's family members are my son's family, and that's
That's
why
why
it's so
hard
hard,
for me
right?
too. Yeah.
It's so hard. So
my
I think it's
oldest daughter wants no relationship with them.
yeah, that's sad.
And it is. But I respect her boundary.
Yeah,
Because they have gaslighted her to the point of where I have taught her such strong boundaries. And their story is I've put all this in her head. No, she witnessed it.
yeah.
She was 8 and 9 years old.
Exactly.
And so she witnessed it. So I'm not going to gaslight my own daughter and be like,
No.
you know what, none of that happened.
Right. When you know it did, and she knows it did. But I think it shows your level of compassion and understanding to say, hey, I'm sorry that this hurts, that this hurts to hear, that it hurts to hear. And
it was a fine line, and it was a decision that was hard to make, and I made it.
It is hard.
And I'm sorry that it hurts.
It's hard. And listen, whether my ex's family or whether your ex's family never listened to any of these episodes, in the event that they do, we want to extend our compassion and understanding of why you may feel this way, about someone you love.
It doesn't mean I still don't hurt and grieve over him. I do.
Right. Oh, I know you do.
And not from a I'm still in love with you place. No, from you were a human being and I wanted so much better for you.
Right.
And you were in such pain. And your children have turned out amazing. Despite all of it, they turned out amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's what something that happened to me this past week was, John Paul came home from going out to eat with his grandparents. And listen, I a lot of forgiveness has had to take place with my ex's parents for, multiple reasons. But John Paul told me that as they were leaving dinner, he was complaining. He was saying something about his dad. His dad wouldn't let him talk at dinner and whatever. But as they were leaving dinner, his grandmother, who, at the time of when my ex and I were going through a custody battle, I don't think, no matter what I'd said, I looked at that woman straight in the face and I'm like, I gave birth to him and y'all have taken him away from me. Do you know what that feels like as a mother? Like, even when I still say those words, it gets me choked up. And I knew deep in her heart that she was hurting, right? But she still defended her son, right?
Yeah. Yep.
She still defended her son, and she defended him, and she defended him, and she defended him, and they've all defended him, and they've all given him passes for all these years.
And honestly, a lot of times that's how narcissism develops.
Yes, all these years they've given him passes. But this is what John Paul came home and told me the other night. Hallelujah. It's just praise God. Because it truly was such a healing moment. He came home, was complaining about his dad not being able to talk, kept talking over him. They walk outside. He says that Grams puts her arm around him and says, sweetheart, I'm really sorry that your dad hasn't always been the role model that you needed out of a man in your life. But I am so glad that you have your grandfathers and Josh.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Holy moly.
And I was like, she really said that?
Yeah.
I'm like, she really said that? He was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the reason why that validates me is because I chose that partner.
Right.
I chose that partner that she doesn't really know on a personal level, but that she can see. She can see that he's a good role model for her grandson, and she acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And that's not taking anything away from her son. So, in case anybody does listen to this, that it's validating for me as I feel like I've done a lot of things right as a mom, but I chose a good partner.
Mom.
I chose a good partner for my son to have somebody to look up to. And man, it was just like, because his dad has never validated me, it felt so good to feel like, oh my gosh, even if it wasn't to my face, because she would probably never do it to my face, but she validated that to my son.
Yeah.
And that is huge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Unfortunately, my ex's family is
Not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much.
They have never, as far as I know, ever said anything bad about Donald. Because literally, he's the perfect person.
You can't say anything bad about Donald.
Bad about Donald. There is nothing, like, how do I say this without sounding phony? He's literally almost a perfect human being.
It's not phony.
You should. He's going to adopt my children. They want him to adopt. And actually, before the crime was committed against my family that I can't really give details about, we were getting ready to proceed with the adoption. But now that we have
Some things.
a lot of legal stuff as an aftermath of that crime that was committed against my family, because it was a crime that was committed against my family, targeted at our children, which is sick and twisted and manipulative and gosh, I want to talk about it so freaking bad.
Soon.
Nah,
Stay tuned.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. This is
Right.
it's
You
going
don't know
on in
when.
a small town.
Yeah, you don't know when.
I don't know if the judges are listening to this podcast.
okay.
I don't know.
We'll still be doing this podcast when, years from now. So
Right. And I want to respect my children, especially one of my children. Gosh, it's just so hard.
It's hard
because
to,
I think if people knew I would feel so authentic and regulated when I can speak it.
Sure.
Right? That's
Right.
what helps regulate me, is like saying that this happened.
Yeah.
And being able to share
And fully say it.
Fully say it.
Yeah. And you will. You'll get your chance.
Will I?
You will. Absolutely.
Because
I
I don't
believe
want to
that.
hurt one of my kids. That's it.
Well, that's true. I mean, maybe you never just divulge that part. So, but I want to stay on topic and make sure that we get through these. So the next one is a good one too. Taking offense does not always mean being triggered.
Yeah. I mean, I have tried my best, and I think I'm pretty dang good at being unoffendable.
Yeah, you are. Mm-hmm.
Literally, a crime had to be committed against my family before I got offended.
Yeah. The only time I get offended is when stupid people like say mean things to you on social media.
I don't even care.
I do.
See, I don't even care about that.
I do.
Don't
It's like, I'm like that.
Whatever.
She sent me a TikTok the other day, and it was like this woman in the background, like when my best friend, when somebody says something mean to me about me on social media, and it's this woman like going off in the background. I'm like, that's me. That's me.
I know. It's like I have to hold my tongue. I'm the professional. I preach self-regulation. I'm going to remain regulated. I truly feel like, to some degree, I'm emotionally bulletproof. It's very, very hard to offend me.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to offend me. And I think that's because I've learned that people operate out of their own wounds and their own triggers. People treat you to the degree that in any given moment they can handle their own demons.
I've always said attachment security is literally when you become unoffendable.
Yeah, you just depersonalize it, right? I'm not going to over-personalize some yahoo, as my dad would say, on TikTok that thinks that what I had to say was dumb.
Right.
Well, fine, move on. Thanks for, you know what, your comment boosted the algorithm, so thanks.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And it is something that, I struggle with when it comes to people I love.
Yeah.
But I think that I've done a pretty good job at it too, of just being like,
so do we want to talk about what a trigger really is?
Yeah.
A trigger is when you have created a neural pathway in your brain around a really negative experience that was not, because it was so deeply painful, your brain was not able to fully process it. And then there's an event where that happens, where that neural pathway gets activated and it brings your nervous system into a state of trauma responding because it feels like it's right back in that same situation. Right? That is a trigger.
Right.
That is not being offended.
Right.
And in the environment that we have right now, politically, y'all need to stop.
I need to calm down.
Calm down.
Which actually leads to this next one, which, gosh, we could probably spend a lot of time on, and we probably have to be careful to not go too deep down the rabbit hole. But everything does not need to be normalized.
No.
Gosh, see, this is a big one because
something can be very normal, but also not like normal as in common doesn't mean normal as in healthy.
Right. And I feel like in our society today, everybody wants to be super woke and think that everything is normal and everything is okay and everything is kosher. Even if you want to be like a furry animal, I mean, those sorts of things cannot be normalized because I don't want to get too again, this is what I want to be careful about. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. But I mean, again, it's like if we offend somebody about what we say.
I know. It's so hard because without revealing totally my political views, again, I've mentioned it. I don't fit perfectly on the right or the left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
I don't either.
And that's what makes it hard.
It
It's
does.
like, because I'm just like not.
And I think that's the majority
But I think
of people.
that's a good thing, because I think that means that like I care about certain issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know the people that will just like always go and pull the lever for one side of the aisle, and
Right.
that's not me.
Mm-mm. Me neither.
And so, and that hasn't been my voting history, and that hasn't, that's not who I am. So, but there are things in this world, without getting specific, that used to be mental illnesses
Mm-hmm.
that should still be mental illnesses and should not be normalized.
Mm-hmm. For example?
For example, identifying as an animal
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
not normal.
Yeah.
Identifying as a non-human
Right.
is not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
That is not,
Mm-hmm.
that is living in a fantasy
Mm-hmm.
that is not sustainable for your life.
Right. And it's mental. I agree. It's mental illness. The root
It
of
is mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah. And we won't go too far on that one. So we're just going to move on, because we could go too far and then we could offend people.
Right. And I believe in love. I believe in loving people.
I do too. And not, and living your life under the premise of like not harming other people.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, okay, I'll say it. I'm more libertarian. Like,
Yeah.
I'm truly like, I would identify more as a libertarian. Like, you do you, boo boo.
Right.
And as long as you're not hurting anybody,
Right. As long as you're doing.
just shut up about it. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to live my life
exactly.
the way I want to live it. You live life the
love
way
who
you want to live it.
Love who you want to love.
But the fact that like these things are becoming so popular and normalized, like wear ears and a tail and bark in like a school,
and request litter boxes in the bathrooms.
my child goes to school with some of these individuals, and it's a little bit like it's weird, and it makes her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because they're taught you can't say anything.
Right. Yes.
You can't say anything about,
and that's
the fact
issue.
that they're dressed up like a dog.
Right. That's the issue. That's the issue.
And like, I mean, I don't even like if you want to identify as something different than you were born with, then okay, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm again libertarian. Like, live your life how you want to live.
Right.
Like, what's between me and my God?
Right.
That I don't have to go and stand before God and answer for you.
Right.
I don't. So you go do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting somebody. That's how I feel it.
Yeah.
I have to go and be in front of my God someday and answer for my life.
But I will say, opinion wise, the root cause is not, the root cause of those things are not being addressed properly.
Right. That's right. That also doesn't mean that I don't deeply care about the mental health of our children. And I think that we have the data now shows that we have the most mentally ill generation, which is the kids that we're raising. And so we have to look and go, well, what's
wrong
did we do?
With us? Yeah.
Because we parented them. And we know attachment theory says that your caregiving is what creates this.
Yep.
Right? So if we're creating a bunch of extremely mentally ill people, then what are we doing wrong? I mean, the rates of suicide of middle schoolers has skyrocketed.
Well, I think a lot of it is attributed to broken relationships.
Yes.
Broken marriages.
And why is it
the family unit is gone?
Why is it offensive to say that a nuclear family
is
best for children? If it can be a healthy nuclear family.
Right.
I'm not saying listen, my divorce was the best thing ever happened to me.
Yeah.
But does that mean that there's still not a ton of data to show that nuclear families that are loving and supportive of their children don't contribute to raising mentally healthy individuals? Why is that offensive now?
I don't know. This is a topic that Josh and I talk about all the time. Why is it?
Because the data is the data.
Right.
The science is the science.
Right. And you are a person that will always back up the science. You follow the science.
That's right. I follow the science. And not just following science. I am all about what is good science and what is freaking junk science.
Right.
And what is science that is bought and paid for. There's that too.
Yeah.
Right? So I take bought and paid for science with a grain of salt.
Yep.
I'm like, I always look at, when I read a research study, I'm like, I go to, the first thing I look at is the conflict of interest page. What are their conflicts of interest? Who's funding this research? And that tells me a lot about how much weight I should put into the results. Yeah, if I'm like, these people have no stake in the game, those are my favorite studies to read, because I'm like, well, I can kind of trust this data. You know?
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good
For
advice. So the last one, which I think is a good way to wrap up, but you're going to have to elaborate. Speaking like an HR memo is not self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be real vulnerable here and say because of what I do, because I'm inherently a teacher. I was a professor for 14 years. You know, I tend to go into teacher mode in my relationship when we're having a conflict, and my husband hates it.
Yeah.
So he's like, I need you to not be in teacher mode right now. And then I have to take accountability. I have to say, you know what, you're right. I'm speaking with a little too much authority.
Right.
And a little too emotionless.
Right.
I'm speaking like I would speak to a client.
Sure.
Right. Instead of my husband.
Right.
So he calls me on that. And you know what, when he does, I do my very best to acknowledge, okay.
Yeah.
You know, let me be a little bit more mindful of my tone.
Yeah, and vulnerable.
Yeah, and let me take a step back.
Yeah, you got to have some vulnerability there.
Right, because, I mean, to give him some credit, he's married to me. Yeah. Like, all I do is critique relationships and relationship behavior.
Yeah.
That's a high damn standard to live up to.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And so people have to understand in your communication with your partner, when you're again, this is why we do capacity building. When you are dysregulated, you lose your mindfulness. So mindfulness and awareness of the present, which means I'm aware of my tone. I'm aware of my body language. I'm aware of the words that I'm choosing. That comes from the prefrontal cortex. That's an executive function skill. When we're dysregulated, we lose our executive function skills and we go into survival mode skills, which is the emotional brain, which are trauma responses, which means that we're allowing our voices to get elevated or we're not mindful of our tone. And even though I'm trying to be mindful of my tone, I think mine is just habitual.
Right.
Like, because I just talk to people all day long. Right. So then when he points it out to me, I have to practice what I preach. I have to take accountability. You're right. I sound like an HR memo right now.
Right.
And, that's off-putting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And again, I feel like it doesn't give away to this sense of vulnerability, right? And being vulnerable is self-awareness. Like I'm vulnerable enough in this moment to be fully self-aware of how I'm approaching and maybe communicating with this situation.
That's right.
So I hope
we went through all of them.
We went through all of them. Hopefully we debunked
I hate
some
pop
of
psychology, and I don't want to say hate.
Yeah.
I very strongly dislike.
Yeah.
All of you coaches out there that are just YouTubing your way through your practice, you're doing people an incredible disservice. And I know that you're jumping on a bandwagon that can be very lucrative. And I get that. But please be careful. You're handling people's hearts. You're handling people's lives.
Yeah.
And you're handling their marriages. And there's often children at play in there.
Sure.
You have to be very well educated, very knowledgeable, and very careful of what you're doing when you're handling people.
Yeah. I
agree. So not everybody needs to go out there and be a coach.
Yeah.
Just because you have some life experience, you're an N of one. That's what we call in the scientific community. You are one individual with one experience. And there are a lot of coaches out there that are just absolutely, their entire practice is just driven from this one experience and this one philosophy. Is it fair to even call it a practice? I don't know. I just know that, and if you're a consumer, before you book with somebody, research them, read about their credentials. Yeah. Right? What have they done with their lives? What have they trained? What's their degree in? If their degree's in HR and they're trying to be a psychologist, it's probably not a good pick because they're probably coming from what we call this armchair psychological, place where it's like you're an armchair psychologist. You're just somebody who's like playing the role. Right. But you didn't have the training. Yep. And psychology is a very wide discipline as well. So, I'm not a clinical psychologist. That's why I don't call myself a therapist. That's why I don't practice therapy. Right. Therapy is different. And I acknowledge that. I don't diagnose. Yeah. Attachment isn't a diagnosis.
Right. And of course you say that, not to speak for you, but you say that to not discourage people to, book or seek out whatever resource that resonates or aligns with you, right? I mean, that's really what it's about. But I think it's important to really do your research.
There's a lot of people selling snake oil. And with that, I will also say, if somebody DMs you from my account asking for a psychic reading,
it ain't her.
or pretending to be me, the only way you can book with me is to go to my website.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
You can't book with me over a message. You can't book with me by, any other means but my website. And so I've had people, unfortunately, have been very, very scammed because there's a lot of people impersonating me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not much we can do. We can't do anything about that.
I've filed copyright infringements. It's been reported so many times, and the person or people responsible will not stop.
That's right,
and I can't control it.
Yeah.
So just be very aware, of who's asking you for money.
Yeah.
I'm never, ever going to ask you for money.
We will never
come
spam
to me and ask me for services, and then you have to pay for those services via my website.
Right. We will never spam you for money. Like
never.
If you reach out to us and have questions, we will answer them truthfully, honestly. But we
If
will
we
never.
can.
Right. But we will never, if we can. Yeah. There's a lot of messages to get to. But we will never just reach out to you asking you to come on to
Listen,
us. That's not our sales tactic.
I am not hurting for clients, so I'm not seeking you out. You have to seek me out.
That's not our sales tactic. We don't believe in that. So anyway, speaking of sales, we have to and want to mention
thank our sponsor.
Thank our sponsor for this podcast, Cozy Earth.
We
have our Cozy Earth sheets, and we absolutely love them so much. They're luxurious. They're soft. They're made of
viscose. I hope I'm saying that right. Viscose bamboo. Bamboo from viscose,
which sounds really fancy.
It sounds incredibly fancy.
Yes.
And they feel fancy.
They feel so fancy.
Oh my gosh. They're the best dang sheets I've ever had.
They are.
They're super luxurious. They're super soft. They're durable. They have not pilled, and they've been washed many times. And in fact, they have a 10-year warranty guarantee on their sheets, which to me is like, you must really stand behind your products.
Yeah. And fall is upon us. And if you just love that cozy, feeling, which everyone does, I don't know anyone who doesn't, of slipping into your bed on a cold, crisp fall evening, what you need are those Cozy Earth sheets.
Yes.
And maybe a Cozy Earth
for my camper.
Yeah, you do.
And now that I go to the camper, I'm like, I don't have my Cozy Earth sheets.
Yeah. So you need to get some Cozy Earth sheets, a Cozy Earth bedspread. And if you use promo code LOVEDOC, at checkout, you can get 40% off your purchase. And then after purchase, if you take their survey, they will also send you a free pair of Cozy Earth socks. So go visit them at cozyearth.com and mention that the Love Doc podcast sent you.
That's
right. While you're online, also go to thedatingdecoder.com and check out Dr. Hensley's services. All of her services are listed there, specifically her hybrid group coaching program, which is an all-in-one, one-stop, 4-week program where you will receive her course plus 4 live calls directly with her where you can break down your situation.
Pick my brain.
Yeah, pick her brain, ask all the questions, and really be a part of a community that is possibly going through some of the same things that you're going through.
And you can be anonymous in the group.
Yes,
people don't know that. You can be completely anonymous in the group.
You have that option as well.
If oh my gosh, I don't want people to know I'm in this group getting help.
Right.
There's you can 100% anonymous.
Be Batman. Like you're not even there. So anyway, go to thedatingdecoder.com, check out her services. And of course, if you are loving this content, please continue to like, follow, listen, leave a review, and please feel free. We really want to hear from you.
Please.
You can reach out to us at the lovedocpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to ask us a question, give us a topic. We want to hear from our listeners.
And we want to do maybe a live coaching session.
Yes.
So if you are someone who's like, okay, well, I can't really afford your services, but I really want to talk to you. And we try to make it affordable. We have payment plans and whatnot, but send us an email.
Yes.
You might be chosen to be a guest, and I will coach you.
Yeah, I think that would make for some really great episodes. Maybe once a month we do a guest, maybe once a month we do a live coaching session.
Yeah, sure.
So please, if that sounds like something you would be interested in, please write to us at the lovedocpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, peace, love, and perspective.